Hey, what's up DIYers, Mike Boards with the Mike Boards channel. Thank you for watching. We're going to show you how to install a bearing carrier and the reverse gear and thrust ring all in our lower unit. It's a Mercruiser outdrive. Let's get started. All right, DIYers at the workstation now, and again, we're going to show you how to install a bearing carrier in your lower unit. As you can see, here ours is on a stand. We're rebuilding the whole thing. Here is the new bearing carrier, reverse gear, and thrust ring. As you can see here, the new carrier actually came with 2 brand new oil seals already installed, which was awesome. In addition, we've got an O-ring and a tab washer and a key. I sent the link to my wife on this part so she could order it, and when it came in the mail, I showed it to her and she said, what could that possibly do for the boat? I said, honestly, without this one part, the entire boat would sink. And from here, what we'll do, reposition the camera and get started. And there's our new carrier, reverse gear, and thrust ring. In here is our O-ring, tab washer, and an additional key that we'll use when installing the carrier. Let's get started. Next, I grabbed the 2,4-C grease. We will need that. I've got the O-ring. Here's the part number. And I'm going to pull this out. Set that aside. There it is. And I need to put this on the beveled or indent portion of the bearing carrier. And it might go on fairly easy this way, but if you're having trouble, you will have to go from the opposite direction. Notice how I push the thrust ring back? And just keep this rubber O-ring going over the gears. Do your best not to allow the O-ring to get damaged on the gears. As you can see, I got a little part there. I'll inspect, make sure everything looks good, and it does. And again, flush with the beveled portion of the base of the carrier the whole way around. Set that aside, and now it is time to grease. We are greasing the bearing carrier because we are going to slide it down the cavity and in place to match the reverse gear with the pinion gear and clutch dog. And per the service manual, again, we need to grease this carrier. We're going to do both the base of the carrier, the O-ring, and the retainer portion. And really get it on there. This is also going to help allow the carrier to be shifted down the cavity in the lower unit a lot more efficiently. In addition, stay away from the gear. Do not get any grease on the gear. If you get grease on the gear, get that off prior to installing it. And the cool thing about the thrust ring, it basically acts as a guard, which is cool. And really get it on there. Also, this grease is going to help this rubber O-ring properly seat deep in the cavity to create that oil-tight and watertight seal, keeping the oil and gear lube in and the water out. What I will do now is I'm going to carefully shift the bearing carrier and rest it on the reverse gear because we actually have to grease the inner portion of this oil seal. Again, to help the rubber portion of that seal properly seat on the propeller shaft so it can make that proper seal to keep water out. And inside the carrier, we have a brand new bearing as well with a bunch of needles inside it. That has already been greased, so we're not really going to hit that, but if you have replaced yours and it is not lubricated with grease, use that 2,4-C, get that needle bearing lubricated and greased up. There it is. I'll get that off there. Next, what I'll do is lubricate this portion of the carrier. From here, I'll clean myself up. And to another close-up of the carrier prior to shifting it into the lower unit. And this little slot right there, very important. That is where that little key goes. And when installing this bearing carrier, that will go in on the top portion. And it must be aligned with this little machine cutout in the thread. And by doing that, you will ensure that the carrier is properly positioned in the lower unit, and you'll be able to install that key in the slot. One last look inside, everything looks good, everything is out of the way, and as we shift this down the cavity, it may be necessary to rotate the drive shaft up top to move that pinion gear and clutch dog to help you align the teeth from the reverse gear on the bottom portion of this carrier to help you shift it in all the way past this thread right here. And I'll put my hands basically inside here, do my best not to touch the outer portions where the grease is. I will need to use my left arm to adjust this thrust ring and right onto the shaft. Align the thrust ring And again, that little key slot must be aligned with the machine cut in the thread up top. Just kind of wiggle it back and forth. It should slide right in. And from here, you may need to pull it back out to align that key again in that slot. And that grease really helps when aligning that key slot with the machine groove. It's very easy to turn this carrier, even being inside that cavity. One last good push, and that is flush. From here, that little teeny tiny key. Do your best not to drop it. See that? Now to a close-up of the carrier inside the lower unit, and that key, as you can see, is perfectly aligned in that groove in the thread and the top slot of the carrier. And part number for that key is right there down below in the comment section, as well as description section is a link to purchase that. Now what we'll do, we've got a package of 2 tab washers, and just match the one up with yours. In our case, it is this one and not the other one. This portion right here, we want to make sure is aligned on the bottom triangle portion of our carrier. As you can see, the triangle is properly aligned with the lower triangle slot of the carrier. And now it is time to open up our spanner nut, and there's the part number, and tighten this carrier in place. Prior to installing the retainer, make sure it is aligned properly on the face facing out toward the prop or you. You will see the word off with an arrow and additional circles. Those are drill points in the event that this gets seized or stuck in place later down the road when it's time to take this off to remove your carrier to service everything. You'll notice the backside doesn't have anything. So again, position this properly, carefully shift it down and align it with the threads and turn it clockwise. And we are actually going to torque this retainer to 210 pounds with a torque wrench. And the torque wrench I have been using in this rebuild process only went up to 150. So I actually had to go borrow one that went up to 210 from a friend. And once it gets hand tight, which it is right now, time to go back to this big tool. Carefully slide it down the propeller shaft and into the slots, lock it in place. We'll grab our socket and the torque wrench and torque it to 210. Torque wrench in hand. And again, 210 pounds. And I might need to reposition this entire lower unit and stand on the ground to give me better leverage. However, I'll do my best to show you as much as I can. And yeah, I'm going to reposition this. All right, DIYers, bear with me. I'm going to apply my leg to one side to alleviate this from shifting, and I'm going to torque this to 210. And all we're waiting for is this torque wrench to click. And it is really tough right now. And as you do this, just carefully rotate the drive shaft to ensure you're not forcing that reverse gear teeth into the pinion gear teeth in an offset manner. That could lead to broken teeth. That's not good. There it goes. You hear that click? Back on top of the workbench, I'll give you a close-up of everything we just installed in the lower unit here shortly. However, what we need to do is test the forward, neutral, and gears to ensure that they work properly. And as I do this, take a look at the propeller shaft as well as up here the drive shaft. And I'll use my left hand to go down to the shift shaft and I'll rotate it clockwise or toward us. And as I move this propeller shaft, you can see the drive shaft rotate as well. Now I will shift the shift shaft to the neutral position, and as I rotate this propeller shaft, the drive shaft does not rotate. Next, I'll shift the shift shaft counterclockwise or away from us, and you can see as I rotate the propeller shaft to the right or clockwise, the drive shaft up top also rotates. And back to neutral. Perfect. Now to a close-up as promised. And what we need to do now is direct our attention to that tab washer. This is the old one, and I grabbed it to ensure that I am bending the tabs on the tab washer the exact same as the old one. And the 2 tabs on the left-hand side, those are going to be bent inward or away from us. This one right here, that is going to be bent outward or toward us, and the far left one will be bent inward or away from us. And again, I'll show you, there is the lower triangle portion, align that, And you can see this tab we bent out earlier in the project, and that third one bent in. And that's what we'll do now. What I'm using to punch 3 of the 4 in is a nail set. Down below in the comment section as well as description section is a link where to purchase this. There it is. And be patient. Do not hit the shaft with your hammer. No need to rush this. And to another close-up in DIYers in the beginning, the tabs were easy to bend in. However, as time went on, as you can see, I scuffed them up pretty good. They were a little harder, but we got them. From here, we'll pull that final tab outward in between these 2 little notches here in the retainer. Next, I zoomed in, give you a better view. I'm getting a little creative here. I got a little piece of rubber, and I'm going to insert it right there, and I've got needle nose pliers with a bend on them. I'm using the rubber to get a better grip. Now, they do make specific tools to pull these out, but I don't have them. And from here, just apply some friendly pressure and bend that upwards. Back to a close-up, and I've got the tab as far bent out and upward as I possibly could. We still have a few things to do, and it's onto the base assembly for the water pump housing and impeller. There's some part numbers, OEM. Check that out, and that will be installed again right up top. And there's the old one.